And we're back, and we're continuing with When the Legends Die. We're going to be finishing up with section 3, where we had the first section is Thomas growing up in the wild, not in the wild, but in the mountains with his family. Then when his family dies, he lives on his own. Then we have the second section, which was Thomas living in the reservation school. And then the third section with Tom in his rodeo days. Well, now he's had this nasty injury, very severe, in which riding is pretty much out of the question. In fact, he's had injuries enough where he should have stopped, but he went one ride too far. And so now he is in the hospital, and he's determined he is going to ride again, and he's going to get out of the hospital. And the issue is how much he's going to rely on other people. And what's coming up is there's a nurse that we've seen a couple times already named Mary Redmond. And she is basically in love with Tom. And so she is thinking she can help him along the way, improve, get better. And then also he may be a boyfriend in the future. So that's something that's going to be coming up with today's reading as we finish up the section 3, as we basically finish his rodeo days as he moves into the rest of his life. But we're starting up with chapter 39, and today we have chapters 39 and 40, or 39 through 41, and we're starting up on page 160. When Mary Redmond came the next morning, cheerful as always, he watched her with rising resentment. She was the most skillful of the nurses, the most solicitous and helpful, and the most friendly. But her very efficiency and gentleness emphasized his helplessness. Oops, there we go. And his need for care. She represented the whole infuriating situation. The fact he was trapped in the hospital, unable even to get out of bed, let alone stand on his feet and walk. And the fact that her voice reminded him of Rowena Ellis, his old teacher back at the reservation, brought back all the bitterness of his memories of the reservation and the school. Finally, she said, "So, you're from Colorado. I hear it's beautiful out there." "You wouldn't like it. Where I came from, it's all mountains and trees and rocks." "Well, I like mountains and trees." But he wasn't talking. The other nurses had told her that he was grumpy as an old bear and didn't appreciate anything you did for him. But most men were that way when they were sick. Then they began to get well, and they saw how much you were doing for them. Some of them appreciated it, or seemed to, even though they did forget you as soon as they left the hospital. She filled his water glass, made his bed, and fluffed his pillow, humming softly to herself. She adjusted the ventilator in the window and came back to bed and asked, "Now, what more can I do for you?" "Give me a glass of fresh water." "I just filled your glass, see?" He reached for the glass, drank the water, and held out the empty glass. "I said I wanted fresh water." His voice was testy. She took the glass, filled it again, and sat it on the bedside table. "There you are. Anything else?" "Don't you know who I am?" he demanded. "Of course I do. You're the man who rode 10 horses to death." She then made a face. "But aren't you proud of being cruel?" "Are you?" "Well, why not?" Then he asked, "So they say it's 10 now?" "Yes, 10. Kind of the one you killed in the garden. The one that put you in here. That's what the papers say anyway." "So that one's dead too." "I didn't know." "Well, now you know." She said it sharply. He didn't seem to be sorry at all, and suddenly she was angry at him. Not only for his callousness about the horse, but because he didn't appreciate anything that was being done for him, by her or anyone else. "Now," she said, "you can cut another notch in your saddle or whatever you do to keep score." But he wasn't listening. He was thinking about the big roan bronc, the one they said brought a score up to 10. Even with that one, the tally was only 7, really, and all but 1 or 2 of those 7 had killed themselves. 7 or 10, but what did it matter? He didn't want to think about them and put the thought away from him. But that night he had the nightmare again and waked in the cold sweat. Remember, that's one of the things getting back into this chapter. He's been having these nightmares, which he's been helpless, and he's falling and he can't stop the falling. Like he says, lying there in the darkness for the first time, he remembered the ride from the moment of the chute gate opened right through to the end. He remembered the bronc's pattern, how he shifted his weight, how the stab of pain in his knees numbed his whole leg. He remembered his anger, then his fear, the fear that made him so desperate he yanked the roan's head around and jerked it off balance. He remembered the fall, the crushing blow on his hips, the agony just before his head struck, just before the knockout. And now he knew why he hadn't been able to finish anything of the ride and that sensation of falling. He had refused to face the fact that he had panicked, that he had forced the fall. Now he faced it, and the nightmares came at last to its conclusion. Coldly analyzing it, he knew his own fear had forced the fall. And there it was, fear. Facing it, admitting it, he could start from that point and think straight. But he had to start there because, according to the code of the arena, a bronc rider wasn't afraid of man, beast, or devil, especially Tom Black. Killer Tom Black. But you don't ride as long as he'd ridden without knowing a few times when fear does share the saddle. You don't admit it, even to yourself. You get up off the ground and back in the saddle and you ride the bronc to a standstill, and the fear with it. Well, now he would go back and ride again. He would be better than ever, with all his skills and experience and the knowledge that he had panicked in the saddle and forced the fall that almost killed him. Knowing that, he would never do it again. It was as simple as that. He had known he had to go back and ride again, but until now he hadn't known why. He hadn't admitted it, but now he did. He slept free of the nightmares at last. Mary Redmond did not appear the next day or the next. He wondered why, but he didn't ask. It wasn't important, and he had plans to make. He had to heal himself and get back on his feet. He had to get out of there. He would go somewhere for a while and take it easy and rest up, get himself back in shape, then catch up with the circuit. It would take a while, he knew that, but he'd be back in the saddle by the end of the summer. He thought of the place on the San Juan. If the cabin was still there, that's where he would go. But that was out. The cabin was gone, as some sheepman probably had moved in by now and taken over the whole canyon. He wondered how Red and Mayo found it in the first place, if Mayo went there to recover and rest up after his smash-up, planning to go back to the arena. He never went back. He stayed there, puttering in his garden, talking to his beans and chilies, even to himself, an old man with a hump on his broken back who once was a rodeo rider. Red's words came to him now. Mayo was a hero once. Now look at him, just another broken-down old chili eater. And then Red's comment, heroes wind up broke, especially if they're Mexicans or Indians. Tom hadn't tried to figure it out before. Even now he could only guess, but he wouldn't have had much left had he got out of here and paid his bills. He had never saved his money. He lived it up when he had it, spent it on hotels and clothes and expensive cars, and these past few years a good deal had gone for doctors and hospitals. He wouldn't be flat broke, but he knew there wouldn't be much left this time. Then he had a wry thought. Red, who had called Mayo a hero who wound up broke, was the one who died penniless. Mayo paid for his funeral. Mayo, who rolled Red every time he came home drunk, accumulated enough not only to give Red a decent burial, but eventually to survive and bury old Mayo himself. Life played strange tricks. Tom, too, was a hero of sorts. Not the kind that crowds come to cheer, but the kind they watch with morbid fascination, hoping to see him kill a horse or a horse kill him, a dark-souled hero. He knew that. And after this brush with death, the crowds would be more than ever fascinated, more morbidly curious. There was another reason to go back, to defy the cruelty and the death wish of the crowd. After all, he was Killer Tom Black, wasn't he, the devil hero? But first he had to get back on his feet and get out of here. Mary Redmond was there for the third morning. She came in with a ready smile and asked, well, how are we this fine morning? He wasn't in a fine morning mood. Where have you been? He demanded. Why, Chief, she exclaimed, don't tell me you missed me. The last time I saw you, hated everybody in sight. I still do. Well, then we can start right where we left off. She put the thermometer into his mouth. Maybe if patients had 2 days off each week like nurses, it'd improve their disposition. She took his pulse and read the thermometer. I guess, she said with a smile, you're going to get well after all. You're looking better. What do you do in your days off? Go around patting old kids on the head just to keep it in practice? Some folks, she said as she began to make the bed, are just too mean to die. On that basis, you'll live a long, long life. Now she knew who he reminded her of. Bart Huntley. Bart was taller and slimmer, but he had the same dark, resentful eyes. Maybe the fear of not being able to walk again had something to do with it. Women were afraid of being disfigured, but men were afraid of being crippled, dependent. Bart was terribly mangled in the auto accident. But they saved both his legs. And if it was her massaging that got him walking again, she could have got him off the crutches too in time, but she saw him only twice after he left the hospital. Once when he took her out to dinner, once when she asked him up to her apartment and cooked dinner for him. He was arrogant and defensive at the restaurant, and at her apartment he was bitter and resentful. She finally came right out and told him what she could do for him, and he accused her of wanting to marry him and for his money. That was the thanks she got. She never saw him again, never even heard of him or from him. So you can see that's kind of this thing. Mary is a little bit too attached to her patients. And she's kind of dealt this thing for Tom where she thinks she's going to help Tom get better. And then in the process, they're going to fall in love and happily ever after. She's done this before. She decided Tom didn't look like Bart Huntley at all, except for his eyes. He had a crooked nose and high cheekbones and a broad, square jaw. He's mad at life, she thought, not at me. She finished making the bed and said, if I had time, I'd give you a massage, but this is one of those days. Maybe tomorrow. He didn't answer. Massage would do your legs a world of good. Then he looked at her frowning. Massage? I don't want a massage. Leave me alone. You didn't hear a word I said. And she laughed at him. I said I didn't have time to give you a massage today. Well, if you need anything, I've got to run. We're short-handed today. The next morning she gave him the massage. Her hands were deep, but firm but gentle, and knew instinctively where the deep aches lie, and how to ease the bed-stiff muscles. He made no comment, but she knew from the way he relaxed that it did him good. That afternoon, Dr. Ferguson came with a strange nurse and took the stitches from the incision he had made to insert the intermedullary nail in Tom's femur. When the nurse had left, Dr. Ferguson said, You're healing nicely. In a few weeks, you'll be able to go home and rest a while. I understand you're from Colorado? Well, I was born there. Nice country. I'd like to retire there myself someday. Retire? I'm not retiring, Tom said. The surgeon smiled at Tom's resentful tone. Still got a lot of gravel in your craw, haven't you? Yes. Well, maybe that's the good to the good, too. The will to get well. Keep on at this rate, and we'll have you in a wheelchair by the end of this week. Then after you've toned up your muscles a bit in the chair, we'll let you try the walker. Get your legs under you, and let's see how you manage. I said we'd get you out of here on your own 2 feet, and you didn't believe me, did you? I told you I'd walk out of here, Tom snapped. Well, that's right, you did. And I said I'd ride again. Well, the surgeon slowly shook his head. Damned determined, aren't you? Then he chuckled. A lot of rough gravel in your craw, he said, and he left the room. Now, chapter 40, page 165. Looking forward to the wheelchair to do something beyond the imprisoning bed and the confines of the room, eased the next few days. Then the morning came when Mary Redmond triumphantly brought the chair and said he was going for a ride. She helped him out of bed, gentle as a child, settled him into the chair, and took him down the long corridor to the sun porch, deserted at that time of day. She showed him how to manage the chair, and he wheeled himself up and down the room for 10 minutes, rested, and did it again. She said he learned faster than any other patient she'd ever had. Finally, aching from the unaccustomed exercise, he let her take him back to his room. She helped him into bed and massaged his complaining, unused muscles, and told him again what a wonderful patient he was. It was easier the next morning, and still easier the next. She exclaimed at his determination, his growing strength, and his quick skill with the chair. You still got a long way to go, but you don't know what it is to give up, do you? I never did, Tom said. Why should I start now? Mary laughed. I suppose you've always been this way, tough and determined. But you'd have to be. It takes courage and determination to ride a bucking horse, doesn't it? Did you always know that? How to do that? Or was that something like learning to walk again that you have to learn? He was resting between sessions with the chair. Look, he said, broncs are mean. They're outlaws. You learn how to ride or you get hurt. I learned by riding broncs. Oh. Well, did you ever have a pet bronc, as you call them? A pet bronc? He laughed at her. I told you broncs are mean. They're not like dogs. We'll give one of them half a chance, they'll kill you. I had a dog once. I was just a little girl that followed me home, and I had it all afternoon and wanted to keep it and take care of it. But my mother said it was just a dirty mongrel. And when my father came home, we called the dog warden to take it away. I cried all night. Over a stray dog? Don't you know what it's like to grow up without anything or anyone to love or take care of? No, I guess not. I guess only girls feel that way. Didn't you ever have another dog? She shook her head. I finished school and went into training, and she shrugged. Some got married, some turned into sour, cat-loving old maids, and some just tried to help people. I guess I'm that kind. She laughed self-consciously. Besides, I don't like cats. They're too independent. He wheeled the chair away, down the room, and resumed his exercise. He was going to walk out of here, and he wasn't going to wait too long. He wheeled himself up and down the room, making plans. Tuesday came, and Mary Redmond was off duty, and he called another nurse to bring the chair and help him into it. They went to the sun porch, and he dismissed her and said he would be all right alone. When he had gone, he had moved the chair to a place where he could grasp a window frame and lift himself out of the chair and out onto his feet. He stood there for several minutes, then sat down and rested and did it again. His legs were weak, and his hip joints stiff and painful, but he took a few tentative steps, holding to the window frames. He rested again, then made his way with halting steps halfway down the room and back. He almost fell twice, but caught himself, holding to the window frames, and then he returned to the chair, sweating with the effort, and was staring out the window when the nurse returned. The next morning he managed a dozen steps without holding on to anything. Balancing carefully on his weak legs, he could walk again. Mary Redmond came back after her days off and said, "You look pleased with life this morning, Chief. So something nice happened." "Well, I'm getting well." "Of course you are." She gave him a frowning look and started making his bed. "You begin to get well and you get impatient. You'll feel better and you'll think you're all well, even though you're not." "I'm going to walk again," he said, "and ride again." "Oh, not right away. You'll need taken care of for a while, even after you leave here. You know that, don't you?" He didn't answer, and she asked, "Was Dr. Ferguson here to see you yesterday?" "No." "I thought maybe he'd tell you could try the walker in another week or so." She finished the chores and left, and came back half an hour later with the chair. "Now you go for your ride, your daily dozen." She helped him into the chair, and even more solicitous than usual. They went to the sun porch, and she sat and waited while he wheeled the chair to the end of the room and back. She wanted to talk, but he shook his head. "Just leave me alone for a while. I'll be all right. Go give somebody an enema or a massage or something." Reluctantly, she left him. As soon as she was gone, he got out of the chair and walked carefully down the room and back. He rested for a few minutes, then walked again. He was halfway down the room, taking his third walk, when Mary Redmond came back. "What are you doing?" she exclaimed, running towards him. "I'm walking." "You can't. You're not supposed to leave the chair." She tried to take his arm, but he shrugged her off, almost lost his careful balance, and caught himself and slowly walked back to the chair. She hovered beside him, wanted to take his arm, but afraid he would lose his balance and fall if she tried. He reached the chair and let himself down into it. "You mustn't do that. You mustn't." "I did it." "You," she said severely, "are going right back to your room. You're not ready yet to walk. You're still weak. Suppose if you had fallen." "I'd have picked myself back up." She angrily piloted the chair back down the corridor and ordered him into bed. "Who do you think you are, ordering me around?" he demanded. But he let her help him back into bed and lay there expecting her to calm down, give him a massage, and admire his achievement. Instead, she took the chair and left the room, bristling with indignation. 15 minutes later, she was back with Dr. Ferguson. They came in, and the surgeon looked at Tom, appraising. "So," he said gruffly, "you pulled a Lazarus." Remember, Lazarus is the man that Jesus brought back from the dead. So, metaphor there, a little bit of allusion there for you. And, then he smiled and said, "Knowing you, I'm not surprised." "Well, but he isn't." Mary Redmond started to speak, then he bit her lip as Dr. Ferguson glanced at her with a frown. He looked at Tom again. "All right, let's see you do it again. Think you can get out of bed and walk over to the window?" Tom threw back the covers and carefully moved his legs over the edge of the bed. Mary Redmond hurried towards him, but Dr. Ferguson waved her away. "Let him do it alone." To Tom he said, "Go ahead. If you've done any damage to those bones, a few more steps won't make it any worse." Tom felt for the floor and stood up. He was still tired from his walk on the sun porch, but by watching each step and balancing carefully, he crossed the room to the window, turned, and came back to the bed. His forehead was beaded with sweat from the effort, but there was both triumph and defiance in his eyes. Dr. Ferguson nodded. "Not bad. Not bad at all. You're a week ahead of schedule." "Well, how soon can I get out of here?" Tom demanded. "That depends. If you tried to walk out of here today, you'd fall flat on your face in 10 minutes. Your muscles are still weak. Right now, you're still walking on sheer willpower and your sense of balance. But you are walking, no question about that." He considered. "Before I can release you, I want some x-rays, and I want to run a few tests. They'll take a few days. Meanwhile, you can get those muscles toughened up and those legs working a little better. Just being in bed as long as you have takes a lot out of everyone." "Well, how long?" Tom insisted. "Well, let's plan on next Tuesday or Wednesday. Unless the pictures of the test show something. How's that sound? All right. After you leave here, though, you have to take it easy for a while. Excuse me. You're not well yet. You'll need a few weeks in some place like a convalescent home, where you can walk and rest and be well taken care of. We have a list of good places at the office. I'll tell them to send a list up. He held out his hand. Stout fellow. They shook hands, and Dr. Ferguson started to leave, then turned back and said, I'll set up the x-rays for tomorrow. Then we'll set up the other tests. Mary Redmond was still there after the surgeon left. She looked at Tom almost accusingly, seemed about to say something, then she changed her mind and left him alone. He lay back in his bed, and every muscle in his body seemed to scream as the tension began to let down. Now, if you're wondering what the issue is with Mary, Mary doesn't want Tom to get better. Mary's hoping he stays sick, needs help, needs someone to assist him so that she has a reason. She's got a reason to stay with him. But she catches him getting better and working to improve himself, and she's mad because that means he'll be out of her life. And so she's trying to get him to slow down, and he's like, no, I'm getting better and getting out of here. All right, chapter 41, the last chapter for today. He was looking at the list of convalescent homes the next morning when Mary Redmond came in. He didn't like the sound of any of them. She came in, bright as always, and said, Well, stout fellow, I expected you to be up, have your bed made, and be taking a constitutional. Where's White Plains? He asked. Out in Westchester. Why? Or Stamford? Connecticut. She looked over her shoulder and saw the list and said, Oh, those places. Then she said, You won't want to walk this morning, I guess. There won't be time after eating your breakfast. You're scheduled for x-rays at 9:45. Well, I had breakfast early, so I'd have time. Bring the chair and I'll get out on the sun porch while you straighten things up in here. Oh, you can't rush things that way. Maybe this afternoon. Go get the chair, he ordered. She brought the chair, would have gone to the porch with him, but he said firmly, I'm going alone. Well, you heard Dr. Ferguson say you'd fall on your face in 10 minutes. If I do, I'll get up again. He wheeled the chair into the corridor and went to the sun porch alone. He alternately walked and rested for 20 minutes before Mary Redmond returned. When he sat down again, she said, Those homes on that list, some of them are pretty terrible, and the really good ones have long waiting lists. He didn't answer. What you really need, she said, is just a good quiet place and someone to look after you and see that you get good meals and plenty of rest. You should continue the massages. That's what really got you on your feet this soon. I hope you realize that. He wheeled his chair to the windows and resumed his walking, slowly, carefully. He still had to concentrate on every step. He'd never tried it, but he imagined walking a tight wire was something like this, demanding almost as sure a sense of balance. He walked and he rested again, and Mary Redmond said as though there had been no interruptions, Oh, you need a place where you can walk several times a day, too. Oh, I wish you had a place like that, like my apartment. It's just 2 blocks from the drive. Do you ever walk along the river and look at the water and just watch the gulls? Gulls? These birds never sing, they just squawk. And they fight over garbage. And I just need to type this in. Here's my computer screen's gone blank. The joys of technology. And we're back. There we go. My apologies. My laptop decided to go blank on me. We continue. Again, what's happening is Mary's trying to set him up. Why don't you go back to my apartment and stay with me? You'll be great. Yeah. He wheeled his chair back to the window and resumed his walking, slowly and carefully. He's scooping it down. Like I said, I wish you had a place like an apartment. It's just 2 blocks down the drive. Do you ever walk along the river and look at the waters and watch the gulls? Gulls? Those birds that never sing and just squawk and fight over garbage? They don't squawk. They cry like lonely children. She looked at her watch. Oh, it's after 9. You better rest for your x-rays. 1 more walk, he said, and walked back to the windows. And walked to the end of the room and back. Then they returned to the room, and she helped him into bed and gave him the daily massage. Her hands seemed even more deft and gentle than usual. She gave him a long, thorough rub before the orderly came and took him to the x-ray laboratory. That afternoon, after Mary Redmond had gone off duty, he called for the chair, and a strange nurse took him to the sun porch. He walked, rested, and walked again for almost an hour. The next morning, Mary Redmond came in triumphant about something, but she kept it to herself till they were on the sun porch and he had walked his first round. Then she said, I found the right place for you. Where? Near Nyack. Where's Nyack? It sounds like a fish or a disease. Well, it's a town just up the Hudson. The place is out of the country, and you'll love it. I know the woman who runs it. I used to work for her. I called her last night. She has a room, and she'll save it for you. Oh, isn't that wonderful? I'll have to think about it. He wheeled the chair away and started walking again. Something in the situation added up wrong. He tried to puzzle it out, forgot to concentrate on his walking, lost his balance, and would have fallen if he hadn't gotten hold of a window frame. Mary Redmond was watching and ran to take his arm, steadying him. He shrugged her off and snapped, "Leave me alone, I'm all right." He was angry at himself, not at her. But when she said, "You're tired, you better rest," he flared, "Leave me alone, I said I know what I'm doing." He walked and rested and refused to talk, and walked again, driving himself. And finally he sat down in the chair and ordered, "Take me back to my room." She took him to his room, but before she had a chance to massage him, an orderly came to take him out for the other tests. It was noon before they finished with the tests. He had a late lunch, and then worn out he slept. He had just awakened when Mary Redmond came in, about to go off duty. "I've called my friend in Nyack this evening," she said. "Do you want me to tell her to hold the room for you?" He had to think for a moment to remember what she was talking about. When he didn't answer, she said, "I'm not trying to talk you into anything. It's just for your own good." She hesitated, then hurried on. When I mentioned my apartment yesterday, I didn't mean a thing. I was just thinking of you and a nice place to walk. So don't get any wrong ideas. If you go to Nyack, I may go up there for a day off and to see if you're getting the right kind of massage. But beyond that..." Then he remembered. The whole pattern fell into place. Blue Elk, Betty Grayback, Rowena Ellis, Red Dillon. They had trapped him. Every one of them had tried to run his life, make him do something their way. And now, Mary Redmond. "Tell your friend," he said. "I've made other plans." But what happened?" She stared at him, then asked, "Did Dr. Ferguson find a place for you?" "No, I found it all by myself." "Oh, well, I hope it's what you need." "It is." There didn't seem to be anything more to say. She turned and left the room. When she had gone, he got paper and pencil and set down figures and added them up. He knew how much he had in the safe at the hotel, the money he had left with the clerk for safekeeping. He estimated the surgeon's bill and the hospital charges. He made a guess at what he could get for his car. He hated to sell that car, but he had to pay the bills. He could get another car with when he was in the money again. He added and subtracted, decided that he had paid train fare and bus fare. He would have about $150, maybe even $200. Enough for a while. At least he wouldn't be flat broke. And then he smiled wryly. Heroes die broke. Well, he wasn't dead, and he wasn't broke. Not quite. That evening he sat for a long time in the chair beside the window and remembered another night, long ago, when he sat beside the window in a shabby little Texas hotel, waiting for Red. How Red didn't come in. Red was drunk, and the next day when Red tried to tell him what to do, how to ride, he knocked Red down twice, then walked out because he knew he would kill Red if he had to get free. He had only one regret now about Red. Red never saw him ride on the big circuit. He sat there a long time before he finally went to bed to sleep. The next morning, Mary Redmond came in, almost as gay as ever. She made his bed, straightened his room, and though she looked at him from time to time, she didn't say a word about the place in Nyack or where he was going. She chatted impersonally about while she wasn't taking, and when she wasn't talking, she was humming to herself, as though afraid of silence between them. Then she brought the wheelchair and let him get into it alone. "I bet you could walk in the sun porch this morning," she said. "But you better not try. You're still listed as a chair patient, and the supervisor saw you, we'd both catch hell." He went to the porch, and she left him there alone for almost an hour. Then she came back and waited for him to say he was ready to go to his room. She gave him a thorough, efficient massage, but she seemed as impersonal about it as though he were someone who had just walked in off the street. She made him feel like an absolute stranger. Remember, that's because he's cooled off any chance for romance, so now he's just a patient again. When she had finished and left him alone in the room, he was tempted to call her back and say he had changed his mind. He would go to that place in Nyack, that he wanted to be taken care of, comforted, eased, and protected. Then he said to himself, angry and aloud, "You fool, you damn fool. You've been taken care of for almost 6 weeks." He pushed Mary Redmond out of his thinking. He had plans to make. That afternoon, just before she went off duty, Mary came to his room again. He was sitting in the chair beside the window, and he started to get to his feet as she came in. "Oh, don't get up," she said. "I just stopped in to say goodbye." "Goodbye?" I do with all my patients before they go. Well, we're not leaving till tomorrow. Well, I'll be off duty tomorrow, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, remember? Oh, that's right. He had forgotten. Well, she hesitated. Well, goodbye and good luck. He was still listening to her footsteps down the hall when Dr. Ferguson came in. He had the reports of the x-rays and the tests. Everything he said was all right. I'll sign a release and check you out before I leave. You can go any time tomorrow. Where did you decide to go, by the way? Well, I'm going back home. Good. Get out in the open air. Eat, sleep, and walk. Best exercise you can get is walking. Check in with the doctor out there every month or so. By the end of the summer, he'll probably let you ride again if it's a gentle horse. Gentle, I said. Tom made no comment. He asked what he owed, and Dr. Ferguson said the records were at his office, but he gave an approximate figure. Tom took the office address, and the doctor wished him luck, and they shook hands and said goodbye. Alone, Tom looked around the room and knew he was a stranger here. A total stranger. He didn't belong here, so he's getting out. Going back to life he did belong to. All he had to do now was close this out and get ready to take up where he left off, and by this time tomorrow, he'd be on the train heading west. He turned to the window and stared out the patch of sky beyond the buildings. Blue sky and the calm, gentle, comforting female color. They thought of his own name, Tom Black. Black, the harsh, ruthless male color. He went out into the corridor and walked towards the sun porch, without the wheelchair, with no one at his elbow. He had almost wished the supervisor or someone would try to stop him, but nobody did. And then we move on next, as we have about 2 sessions left, with the final section of the novel of When the Legends Die.